feel like we're finishing on a high note because the mediocre quarterback class, really exciting running back class, really questionable wide receiver class, and then the tight ends, I think we will all agree it looks pretty great for them. Dave told me before the show that he's going to bring some controversy to his top 5 tight end rankings. So let's go ahead and kick it off.
Yeah, my top 5, and again, this is a lot like the wide receivers, where I feel like there is a top 6, but my top 5 is Tyler Warren. I think that he is in a tier of his own. Like I said, I go to the film and I try to find warts in these players' games so I could set myself up for the inevitable disappointment. I couldn't find any in Tyler Warren's game. I mean, he is about as perfect of a prospect as you can come across. I've got Terrence Ferguson as tight end too, and I think a lot of people are going to say that I was overreactive to his good combine. He was my tight end 3 before the combine. I love the after the catch abilities. He averaged 9 yards after the catch per reception last year at Oregon on a huge target sample. That is just a crazy number, and that's what we want to see in fantasy, yards after the catch abilities. At 3, I've got Colston Loveland. At 4, I have Mason Taylor, who is also a big mover for me after the combine. Didn't do the athletic testing, but you just see him and the way he moves alongside his peers. He is just such a fluid athlete. And then at 5, I've got Harold Fannon, who was my tight end 2 pre-combine, but we know there's a strong correlation between athleticism and tight end production. And Harold Fannon not checking those elite athletic measurable boxes at the combine is definitely cause for concern.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of a different tight end grouping here. At 1, I still have Tyler Warren. I think that he's just the modern day Dallas Clark. You can kind of line him up everywhere, and he's going to have that awesome athleticism downfield. At 2, I've got Colston Loveland. This is a player that I think has very similar athleticism to Warren and was just held back so much by that Michigan offense. At 3, I've got Mason Taylor, who is just your prototypical perfect tight end where he can block, he can run, he can do everything. And he's got the NFL pedigree being Jason Taylor's son. I think he's going to be a guy that can easily hop into an NFL starting lineup on day 1. Whoever drafts him is drafting him to play him, not have him in a rotation. Elijah Arroyo is a guy who might not be the best blocker, but he's a heck of an athlete. He was great at the University of Miami last year. I think a lot of people are going to look and say he doesn't have a lot of production throughout his career. That's been for one thing or another, whether it's been injuries or a bad quarterback play at Miami. But we saw how good he's been this year. And at the Senior Bowl, he was absolutely just killing linebackers, safeties, DBs, anyone going up against him. He's a smooth route runner. I love him there. And then at 5, I've got, Dave's shining knight, Terrence Ferguson. So there I am at 5. I don't have Harold Fannon in my top 5. Sorry about that, Dave.
That hurts my feelings quite a bit. And his performance at the combine was, I guess, when I looked at the numbers, Dave, and there were several things from the combine that I kind of felt this way about. Well, that's not really good, but it's not so bad that I have to cross him out, which is exactly how. And so I think it's kind of a Bucky Irving situation in some ways, that we saw an extremely productive player, Harold Fannon, one of the most productive tight end seasons we've ever seen. And then we see disappointing measurements and disappointing performance at the combine. Does it matter more because of the level of competition that he faced in college?
Well, when he did face good offenses, he had some of his best games. Like, it wasn't like he was just beating up on the poor opponents. So Harold Fannon, I think he's one of the most intriguing players in this draft. And I don't want to overreact too much, but going into the combine, I already did have this really tight. And what I kind of do with my combine rankings is I'll move guys inside of tiers. So, well, it sounds like it's this huge drop from Harold Fannon that he went from being my tight end 2 to my tight end 5. The reality is my tight end 2 to my tight end 5 are extremely tight. So I moved him to the bottom of that tier, but still like him a lot. He showed up a little bit shorter and weighed less than we expected. And that was kind of the first thing that was disappointing. Then he came out and didn't run the fastest 40, and that was a little disappointing as well. So I'm not sitting here saying that Harold Fannon is now going to tailspin down draft boards and be a day 3 pick, and you shouldn't have, want anything to do with him in Dynasty. It's just that it's already such a good tight end class that when Terrence Ferguson and Mason Taylor really show out at the combine, Colston Loveland was already a guy that I like quite a bit. When Harold Fannon isn't doing quite as well alongside his peers, I have to move him to the bottom of the tier, but I still think that he has every ability to be a very, very good NFL tight end.
Alfredo, you guys both, and basically everyone has Tyler Warren as the top prospect in this class. There's some people that have talked about him maybe as a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. So, of course, being who I am, I'll bring up the lone wart and that is the fact that he's going to turn 23 years old before he plays a game in the NFL. And he wasn't particularly good in terms of production until he was older than everybody else. Does that bother you?
No, because I mean, from what we see on the film is that it's not like he was running around bullying younger kids and smaller kids. He was doing it from all over the field. He was lining up as a running back and having to go up against linebackers and defensive ends, and he's outrunning safeties and corners. So from a physical standpoint, it's not like it was the senior kid like dunking on all the 8th graders on the JV team here. This was a guy that was still going up against top competition and doing it in a myriad of ways. And so I think for him, a lot of it still is, I would say, is projection of just a guy who's a phenomenal athlete. Do I think he should go in the top 10? No, I know he's very talented. I just don't know that I would take any tight end that's not like a Brock Bowers or a Kyle Pitts or someone like that in the top 10. I think some people might say Tyler Warren is a very similar prospect to those guys. I don't quite see him there. I think he's probably best going maybe 14 to Indy. I could see him going a little bit lower, but yeah, I'm not seeing him as a top 10 guy.
So we're going to get deeper on these rookies, go well past the top 5 once we get more information, once we know more about landing spot, how the draft capital, how the NFL viewed them.